helped us to get out to the car, and he was so she was in the car, and he went down.
Mark usually does it.
But he didn't find his character, she said, I had so much.
Yeah, she thought that you might have.
So they left. They left the store. Well, my husband was there. What? I guess. Oh. Oh.
February. Oh, February.
Yes, we're only 2 weeks, so that's
If
anybody ever this time of year, let me know, I'll listen about.
Is what?
Anybody got your, we used to get all over together about it. All right, back to my meeting.
I mean, I understand, but well, if you were at the Globe Theater when the Merchant of Venice opened, okay? Okay, if you were at the Globe, all right, if you were at the Globe Theater when the Merchant of Venice opened, and heard about Shylock, you would never have seen a Jew. Jews were not in the country. They were not allowed in the country. The early presence of Jews, although there might have been like people that were shipwrecked or something, was in 1066. And the Jews arrived with William the Conqueror, largely from Normandy. And William let them in, not because he loved us, but because he needed moneylenders. And that was a role that the Christians were barred from. The financial importance to the crown provided royal protection, but also long-term resentment, as I am sure we are all well aware of. During the 12th and 13th centuries, there was incredible hostility. New regulations were placed upon the Jewish community by Edward I. They built restrictions. His father had put some on, but they also started to get the Jew statutes. In 1144, there's the first recorded blood libel in Europe, which occurred in Norwich, accused the Jews of murdering and taking the blood from a young man named William, because it was close to Passover, and as you know, we need blood for the matzah. The Jews were allowed to be moneylenders. They were allowed to be merchants. They were merchants that weren't allowed to sell to Christians. They were not allowed as part of guilds. And as a result of these new laws that were passed in 1275, many Jewish families became very poor. The king could no longer collect taxes, and hundreds of them were arrested and hanged. Similar fabrications about the blood libel happened in all over England, in Gloucester and in Bury St. Edmunds. Jewish violence erupted during Richard I's coronation, culminating in the York Massacre. The York Massacre, Michael and I were in York at our hotel, looked out at this hill, and I realized it was the hill from the York Massacre. Many Jews were in a synagogue that were at the top of the hill. They were barred in and burnt alive. Then, when you go there, you see people climbing up it. We just said a few prayers, but this was what was going on. There was an edict of expulsion in 1290. So if everybody thinks we got expelled from Spain first, England always was first. The Jewish community was unrecognizable at that point compared to the Jewish community that had come in. There were letters, telling sheriffs you don't have to protect Jews anymore. People started hating us because we were the tax collectors. And the ones that really started hating us was the nobility, because, they were in debt to Jewish moneylenders, so they killed us. Any Jews remaining after a certain date were to be seized and executed. Jewish houses would be forfeited to the crown. Any of this beginning to sound somewhat familiar? Jews could take with them only what they could carry. Many Jews in London were moved to the river to make something called walk the sandbank. And then, if you know the Thames, it's a very, the tide comes in very high, and they were left there to drown. It's estimated that 3,000 Jews were forced to leave England. In return for the expulsion of the Jews, Parliament gave King Edward a tax of 116,000 pounds, whatever, I'm sure was a huge amount. His edict to banish Jews was followed by his fellow Christian monarchs in France and in Spain. It wasn't until 1656 that Oliver Cromwell allowed the Jews to return to England. Some were there, some never left, but they were hidden Jews, very much so hidden Jews. The Statute of Jewry that was passed in 1275 outlined the areas that the Jews had to live in, which were very, very specific areas. Any Jew that was over 12 years old had to wear a yellow badge. It was in the shape of the tablets of the Ten Commandments. And there was a special tax, 12 pence per Jew, that had to be paid every Easter. And that didn't matter how old you were. It was 12 pence per Jew. Under Henry III, Jews faced increased taxation. Again, the force to wear the badge. They weren't allowed to build synagogues. There were limits on interaction with Christians, and they were very, very strict. The Statute of Jewry also outlawed usury for Jews, which meant that they couldn't earn an income. England became the first European kingdom to expel all of its population. No openly practiced Jews lived legally in England for over 350 years. Now, Moranos came over from Spain. Hidden Jews were there. With the Jews absent, in Tudor England, you would think, oh, well, there's no more anti-Semitism. However, we don't even have to be there in order for them to hate us. Religious sermons and mystery plays. And mystery plays, the church had a problem because nobody could read, so they would put on these plays every holiday, and basically the theme of the play was the Jews killing Jesus, or the Jews killing a kid for blood. Chaucer's, even in the literary works, Chaucer's in Canterbury Tales, he writes the Prioress's Tale, which talks about the Jews who weren't around. An economic and social symbolism of the Jew as a moral or theological villain. And England developed a cultural memory of Jews without actually any Jewish communities, also intensifying any of the stereotypes. Now, there were a small number of Iberian conversos, Jews forced to live with Christianity, and they may have lived in the late 15th century, but nobody was openly Jewish. The expulsion remained in force really to 1603. After 1603, they were kind of allowed to return. We know that Queen Elizabeth had a doctor called Lopez Rodrigo. We know that he was a converso. And we know that Elizabeth liked him because even though they got him because he was a Jew and drawn and quartered him, which was, if anybody doesn't know what that is, let me know, I'll explain it. But the Queen made an exception and allowed Rodrigo's family to inherit his wealth, even though he was killed by the crown, because there was a rumor that he was trying to poison Queen Elizabeth. And yet there are pictures of him, well, paintings, being one of the bearers of the chair, carrying Elizabeth wherever she was going. So they hated us. And so when you have, let me just get to my paper, I'm sorry. You have a couple of anti-Jewish plays before The Merchant of Venice. There were the only Shakespeare play with Jewish characters, and the only one in which Jews play a major role. Nearly all of Shakespeare's content about Jews occurs here. However, they are mentioned in many other plays. Shylock is a Jewish moneylender. And when I was teaching Shakespeare and the Jews and Merchant of Venice. One of the things that I tried to get across to my students was that people didn't know them. And when I first started teaching, I could very easily say, how many of you have heard of gypsies? You know, how many of you know gypsies? Nobody knew them. What do you know about gypsies? And all of, the stuff would come out. And I'm sure if we asked ICE about some of the people they're picking up, they would know quite about the same thing. Shylock, we don't think his name was Shylock. It might have been Jacob. We're not quite sure. Shylock really refers to the payas. Jessica, who is Shylock's beautiful daughter, and she eventually elopes with Lorenzo and converts to Christianity. And then there's Tubal, who is a friend of Shylock's. Shylock's is repeatedly referred to by his religion or ethnicity. The Jew, many, many times. Shylock the Jew, also many times. And the Hebrew. This reflects Elizabethan's tendency to identify characters by group identity rather than individual personality, and also reflects a period of stereotypes. So as soon as Shylock enters the stage, the audience is already, ready to hate him. One of the things about the Jews is when they did come to a land, when they came to England or anywhere, they came to lands that were under what they called the Noah decrees. And basically it's a sense of humanity. And one of the things in the Noah decrees is that you don't eat living things. So that immediately, as we go on to the play, set up, a disparity for what was going on. Shylock does everything and says everything that the Elizabethans would figure a Jew would say, until he comes up to the speech, "Hath not a Jew eyes? If you prick us, do we not bleed?" This is Shakespeare's most profound statement on Jewish humanity, challenging the audience to recognize the Jews as fully human, an unusually sympathetic turn with an otherwise hostile portrayal. But we know Shakespeare knew about the Jews. He knew some things about the Jews because several items are mentioned in the play. The Jewish dietary laws are mentioned right at the beginning of the play. Shylock is invited to dine with Antonio's people, and he won't do it. And he goes through all of the Jewish laws. I won't eat with them. They have, they serve milk with meat. They were very familiar with the Jewish business customs because Shylock is a moneylender, and the whole point of the play is that Antonio has to get money from Shylock in order to finish courting Jessica, and they also know distinct religious practices. Now, Shylock refuses to dine with them because Jews eat pig's flesh, and that's said right away in Act 1, Scene 3. And when he swears oaths, he's always swearing on Jacob's staff or by Abraham. And then there's Jessica. Jessica really does not like living with Shylock. And there's probably a lot of reasons for it. She is a beautiful, supposedly blonde. She knows that there's partying and all kind of stuff going on outside of the doors of her house. Shylock, when he leaves the house, wants the doors and windows shut up so that she won't hear anything. She won't hear anything about, with the Christians. But she's a teenager, and it doesn't work. And she does wind up marrying, and she describes her Jewish home as a hell. She says that she's saved by her husband because he made her a Christian. Her conversion is presented positively by all of the Christian characters, reflecting Elizabethan Christian attitudes towards Judaism. Christian characters called Shylock a dog, many times. Okay, I'm sorry, I dropped these on my way in. Okay, a cutthroat dog, a villain Jew, a misbeliever. They were always shown, thank you, as the devil, with tails and all kinds of stuff. And these lines reflect the strong anti-Jewish stereotypes common in England, where Jews had been expelled since 1290 and existed largely in the caricatures of the cultural imagination. And we can see some of those caricatures. The Nazis were not too independent, so they used a lot of them. Then there's the pound of flesh. The pound of flesh blood. This plays into the medieval stereotypes portraying Jews as vengeful and bloodthirsty moneylenders. Shakespeare complicates this by giving Shylock's human motivations, mistreatment of Christians, his daughter's betrayal, but the stereotypes remain central. And first of all, no Jew is going to, or if anybody living under these laws is not going to take flesh from a person and eat it. It's against all kinds of laws. But this is what really makes Shylock look bad. He has been mistreated during the entire play by all of these Christians. And when they appeal to him, and they appeal to him for money, he writes out a contract that seems to be possibly absurd, and when it can't be met, he insists on getting this pound of flesh. He doesn't get it. His daughter comes up to protest against him. Nobody stands for him. And the final punishment he has is that he has to give up everything he has and he has to convert to a Christian, which is pretty regular, Tubal, who is the other Jew, and he's in there like as a connection to the Jewish community. He's always discussing Jessica's behavior, and he's always discussing jewels and Jews' money. And this is, just to encourage people to believe this connection between the Jewish community, a community that they never saw, because they didn't exist. He mentions Jews in other plays, doesn't quite develop the characters. In Two Gentlemen of Verona, he says, in passing reference, he said, he's such an evil man, he would even make a Jew's eye watered. In Much Ado About Nothing, if I do, hang me in a bottle like a cat and shoot me, and he that hits me, let him be clapped on the shoulder and called Adam, that only a Jew would do that. I will not be sworn, but my love transform me to an oyster, but I'll take my oath on it, he's a Jew. So again, you have Jews coming into many of the plays during that time. In Macbeth, one line literally refers directly to the Hebrews in discussing, biblical matters. There's no explanation except when you heard that and you were an Elizabethan, you knew that that was a reference to someone not good at all. And even in King Lear, that horrible, horrible tragedy, this is the Jew that Shakespeare drew. Anytime there's references, the references aren't good. But the thing is that nobody ever saw us. We didn't exist. We didn't exist until, Cromwell was the one that allowed Jews to start coming back into the country because Cromwell needed money. And, the Jews were then allowed to come back in the country, and they haven't had an easy time of it. But the Renaissance, where you have plays about Jews, are plays about mythical creatures, because you never, ever saw them. And the problem that you have with, especially with Jessica and Shylock, is not only are they Jewish, but they are divided, and she sees that the best life is the Christian life. And so she sneaks out, and when Shylock hears that, he refers to as, they have stolen from me. They have stolen, from me. It's almost like he owned this girl. So the image that is painted of the Jews is really a cloying, grabbing devil that sucks blood, that poisons wells, and basically is out for your money. The thing that always amazed me is that you didn't even have to be there. They just hated us. We think that the name Shylock is unusual, but they thought that, Elizabethans might recognize the name, but it mimics the name. It's a name that was made up. Shylock enters our culture as a malignant literist, a miscreant holding his knife, hoisting his religious bond. He will not, and when he gives the speech at the end of the play, where he's trying to step back, and he starts. I wish I had brought that with me. When he says, "Has not a Jew eyes?" He's trying to make a Jew relatable to, and we can use this speech anywhere we want. Doth not an immigrant bleed? So things haven't changed. It's just the object of the hate for the moment has changed. And Jews in England still have a problem. It's, what?
Jews everywhere.
Yeah, Jews everywhere.
And I have a friend who lives in London, and ever since I know her, she always felt it. Yeah.
And that's fairly.
What you're up to now is sort of like, well, not at the beginning of the, sort of like after the war, at the second, but we knew it existed, but it wasn't so overt as it is now.
Now it's hard.
Yeah.
It's
And
very
it was
hard.
that way, before the war, before the Second World War was like that too.
I don't, we have a,
When London, in England ever,
huh?
in England it was always very overt, very obvious. Yeah.
But they did get a Jew for, I mean,
Yeah.
so, and the story that always amazed me was the story of of Dr. Lopez, because he was trained in Spain as a physician, and that's where, and also trained in one of the Arab countries. So he was a really qualified guy, and Elizabeth just loved him until they started telling stories that he was poisoning her. And, it just didn't matter. And the reason they gave was because he was once a Jew. And once a Jew, always a Jew, and you can't trust a Jew. And the idea that the government, well, not so weird anymore, but that the government, as in Russia, remember they would have the pogroms pretty much under the orders of the government. The same thing happened in England. There was a reason why the blood libel, was told, and it's a reason why the blood libel was told around Easter, on Passover. And it gave you permission because these people are others. They're not human. Even if they're not here, they're still others. And we know that if you remove humanity from a group of people, you see what happens. And the same thing was true there. I always enjoyed teaching this play, especially when I was teaching all black kids. And, the way we were being able to exchange ideas was quite interesting. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen Merchant of Venice, but and I couldn't print them out because I didn't know how to do it. There are many pictures of the different ways Shylock is shown in all the different plays. None of them are good. There is also, there was in, I think, 12 something, there was a Jew that was lived in the forest and was arrested with a bunch of non-Jews for killing one of the deer. And there were laws called the laws of the forest, because the king owned anything living in the forest. And if you killed one of his animals, you were put to death. But in this case, only one was put to death. And you'll never guess who it was, the Jew. And part of it was because the idea that a Jew was living in the forest, that's not where they're supposed to be. And so, the only thing I can say is things haven't changed. Things haven't changed. At one point when I was teaching The Merchant of Venice, I was very hopeful. Back in the 60s, maybe the 70s, things looked like they would be coming to some kind of good conclusion. But nothing has changed. And when we read Shylock as Jews, we read it very differently than non-Jews read it. Yeah.
I've never gone to see a production of The Merchant of Venice. I didn't want to. I didn't want to hear all that. But I wonder, I'm sure you have, and maybe others here, how do audiences respond to this constant, do this, do that?
It depends. We know that in the Globe, there was cheering when bad things happened, there was booing. I think, at least when I went to see The Merchant of Venice, and I've seen it many times, nobody was booing the Jews. I think the first time I saw it was at Princeton, I saw it in England. But, back in those days, it was, violent. I don't know what people were thinking, but there didn't seem, in some cases, there didn't, when, I remember when Jessica, left, and Shylock is destroyed. He's losing his daughter. And I heard laughter in many of the audiences. It wasn't funny, but they thought it was funny. So, it just always amazed me. When I think of anti-Semitism, I think about Germany, thinking about other places now. When I was studying Shakespeare in college, they said to us there were no Jews there. And it does not seem to matter at all. And that's a story of Shylock and the Jews. When Jews started to come into England, many of them snuck into England. You had, and lived as conversos. But for the most part, if you were caught in England, you were killed. Because we were vermin. And we have a cultural memory, I think, as Jews, of all of these things that have happened to our people. I mean, I think you're born with it. And the world doesn't make it any easier. Anti-Semitism and ideas flourished all over England while we weren't there. And then when we came, it became even worse. You know, and if any of you know the blood libel stories, you know, they're just horrible, you know. And there was never any proof. You know, they found a dead kid. You know, well, in Shakespeare in England, and before that in medieval England, it was easy to find a dead kid. You know, but, you know, they had proof that the blood was drained, that they were making matzah out of it. So things really haven't changed. Now, the one thing that did change, at least I saw, is as I was teaching this play over the years, I saw more and more understanding from a lot of different groups, not so much of the Jews, but recognizing themselves and their history, you know, as part of this. Because it is, you know, it's, and especially now,
It's persecution.
huh?
It's persecution, as long as you're white and Christian. Otherwise,
You know, we haven't reached the point where we're taxing people for being immigrants, but who knows with that guy, it could, you know, eventually come. It's, you know, the thing that always amazed me is that people never learn. That they keep repeating the same things over and over again. And I'm very grateful to Shakespeare to have written this play, because it, you know, when you teach it, you really can get a lot of conversation out of students on topics that they normally wouldn't talk about. You know, and to see them relating to what was going on and able to tie it into their lives. You know, I had my Indian students, I had one girl who said, "Oh, I know exactly how Jessica feels." You know, because her parents were going to send her back to India to find a husband, that was it. And you know, the kids started talking about the restrictions that they had on dating, and they were like shocked that it wasn't anything new. You know, and you know, so it becomes a very relatable play, a very sad play, but a very relatable play, which I think most of Shakespeare becomes.
You talked about the blood libel, I just want to mention that.
Louder, honey.
You talked about the blood libel.
Yeah.
And to show you how current that feeling is among non-Jewish people. A year after the Second World War, in a town called Kelshi in Poland, a little boy went missing. And the townspeople, they just got upset, and they took 20-some Jewish people and killed them.
And killed them.
And the little boy was later found, and this was after the Holocaust. This sort of the year after the war ended.
Yeah.
And now every year in the town square of this town, Kilshi in Poland, they have a memorial service on that day, and that would be July 4th. And we were in Poland during the time when we took our trip to Poland.
Yeah.
With the professor, and we were offered a side trip to Kilshi, and we took it. And there were religious leaders of every sect, including Judaism, on this square. School children, townspeople, everybody came out to memorialize the names of these people. And in front of the houses where these people lived and were taken from, they put out chairs with the names on each chair of the person who lived in that house and story.
Yeah.
So they were doing something to remember what happened.
Yeah.
And that's a step in kind of the right direction.
Absolutely, it's a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, it's one step forward and 3 steps backward.
Yeah, the blood libel is so, I mean.
Yeah, the blood libel, it'll pop up again. You can be sure. It's sometimes my Christian friends, you know, would say to me, especially when I started teaching Holocaust studies, because I was one of the first people that did that in Philadelphia, and they said, "That was in the past. can't you people ever let it go? And no, we can't because nobody else does. So, yeah, never forget. And I can only imagine what it must have been like to be one of the conversos in the audience at the Globe. But I'm sure that some of them, because the conversos, look, they made money, and you didn't even have to have a lot of money to go to the Globe. I think it cost pennies to get in, to stand in the center. And, you could, I can't even, I mean, I was at the Globe, the rebuilt Globe a couple times, but you get this picture of all these people standing there and booing and applauding, at what we would consider very inappropriate times. And the Elizabethans were not real quiet in the theater. They would talk, it was like they would talk back to the actors, they would make comments, and I don't think anybody was saying, forsooth, stop, we don't know any of them. So that's, the story of the Jews in Europe, in England, is the same story that we hear over and over again.
But the thing that's so remarkable to me is in other countries, there were Jews living there. But in England, you had that period of, 300 years?
Yeah, no Jews.
Where there were no Jews, so obviously these lies were being passed down and probably reinforced by the church.
By the church.
Because of the teachings.
Yeah, the church, when they did the mystery plays, I got a hold of a video once from my class in the mystery plays because they were like, oh, mystery sounds cool.
Yeah.
And what they would do is they would have a field. And in the field, they'd have like 5, 6, or 7 wagons. And in each wagon, the open wagon, they would have a part of the play. And the plays were always the same. Characters were different, but it was always good Christians, tempted by evil Jews, always a woman, a young girl, something happened to her, and then terrible, God rains terrible punishment down on the Jews, and then by the last card, everybody's happy because there's no Jews, and and we're good. And they still do mystery plays in Germany. They do a series of mystery plays around Easter, and they're big. I mean, it is a big draw. We're, huh? Ober, yeah. Yeah. And, huh?
The big social...
Yeah, it's a very big social thing. I mean, I don't know that things are ever going to change. I really don't. My father used to say we were a bone in the craw of the goyim. And I think he's right. I mean, we're there for a reason. I'm not quite sure what. But,
Maybe it's human nature, we have to blame someone.
yeah, well, I could think of other things to blame.
Blame someone.
Republicans. I remember my son when he was like 6 or 7 years old, we were driving in the neighborhood with friends, and there were a lot of Christmas displays up. And this little pisser turned around and said, if it wasn't for the Holocaust, there'd be a lot more menorahs in the windows. And that's true. I mean, no matter what we do, no matter how good we are, no matter how bad we are, we're cooked. Ask anybody in Europe right now if they remember when Israel would send all kinds of help in when there were landslides or anything like that. Nobody remembers that. That's gone. That's all blank history. But this was one of my favorite periods to teach. It really was. I love teaching Shakespeare. And because you can relate Shakespeare to almost anything. I always said, as long as you can have sex, love, and rock and roll, you got it. And you have it. You know, and also there's, at one point, Jessica dresses as a boy, which is, you know, to sneak out of her father's house. This is like, there were laws on the books about how you had to dress. They were called sumptuary laws. And you could lose your life for breaking them. And they included things like, if you wanted to wear the color purple, I mean, if you couldn't prove to me that you were royalty, I'd have to slap your head off, you know, because there were foods you weren't allowed to eat, depending on, you know, where your status was. So when she gets dressed as a boy, you know, and comes out dressed as a boy, it makes the whole thing even more shocking, you know, to her father and to the people when they hear that. And it's like what saves her from anything is the fact that she marries a Christian. And, you know, and I think the biggest tragedy in that play is watching the end of it when Shylock is taken off by the priests to be converted and loses everything. His daughter, everything is given, all of his wealth is given to his daughter, which means that it went to the Christians that hated him, that owed him money. So that's my story. That's Shakespeare and the Jews. Thank you for letting me. It was fun doing this because I had left all my material at Central when I left. So I had to, you know, I discovered this thing called AI. Oh, I wish to God that had, but it was, you know, amazing because it really went into depth. But it was, you know, that's it. You're welcome.
We're all here, and the year is upon us. Next month, Rabbi Peggy asked to speak to us. So that would, and she asked suggestions for topics, and I mentioned a couple things that I was curious about. I don't know what she selected.
What did you suggest?
Well, one thing, at services 2 weeks ago, they talked about in the Tanakh, the prophetesses, the seven
You don't hear
prophetesses.
too much about it.
Yeah. And another thing, and this was, I said, maybe this is just me. I'm very curious with the technology with reproductive, today, where a woman can carry a baby that's not her egg, and it's not it may be one partner's sperm, it may be another partner's egg, it may be, who's the Jew? To these babies, I mean, because I know adopted children have to be murdered. And really, she said to me, well, I think I could do several sessions of that. So I said, I'm just like, and she said, well, by and large, the way, regardless of the sperm or the egg or anything, the person that gives birth, she said, the pregnant person, she didn't say woman, she said pregnant person. Oh, no, this is a thing, if you look in the newspaper, and they call them PC, pregnant person, not pregnant woman. Huh? Well, because a woman can identify as a man and just not have changed his organs, their organs. But, yeah, she said, if the pregnant person is a Jew, then the child is a Jew. So if it's a surrogate, and the surrogate is not Jewish, then the child.
Even if the zygote was, you know,
Well, that's what I said, what if it's the male, the Jewish male sperm, and the females, but a surrogate is giving birth? And she said, well, by and large, it's the pregnant person. And I thought, that's very woke, Yes. Because I think most of the time, practically all the time, it's a woman. Just a pretty person.
The pregnant person has to have uterus. So,
Yours isn't showing.
well,
So I did send her an email and said, what did you choose? And she wanted to choose something that would be of interest to the group.
Yeah.
So,
any of those things, yeah.
Yes.
oh, but I wanted to, and maybe I'll do it next month instead of today. Suggestions on topics. I know not everybody's like Sherry or Idell or really comfortable speaking, but you may have ideas of topics. And if you also would like to facilitate the topic, I mean, Arlene is an expert in gematria.
Yeah.
I mean, to different things.
Yeah, we're a talented group, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't have to, and also I was gonna send something out about snacks so that I don't have to.
It's a gold.
You know, you can pick a month to provide snacks.
Down here first.
I don't know why it's sent out to
Where is-
provide snacks.
It could have jumped.
Phyllis, what did you lose?
A gold ring.
Oh, you bet.
ring? A ring. When I moved my chair, I moved my hand and I felt it slide. Okay, so it's definitely. It's gotta be in this room. Yes. I've been looking and I shook my
You feel it
coat.
go off a
I
certain
felt
way?
it fly off as
You
it,
don't know what you want.
but I'm sure it
Put your flashlight on your phone.
So it's.
Sure it's not in your purse, was it next to your purse?
No.
Thank you, Sherry, that was very good.
You're welcome.
But you felt it.
Never read that, never read that.
You never read Dash and
Merchant Event, no.
I don't have a replay. No.
Thank you, Sherry. Did you teach high school English?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I was an English major.
I
I
did.
took, of course, a Shakespeare course. I don't remember reading The Merchant of Venice, but I just never wanted to see it. I just didn't see it.
You have to tell more.
According to what you're saying, you know, you should see it.
Yeah,
It's part of,
It's part of it.
I just,
It's a hard
feel
play.
uncomfortable.
It's, of course you do. It was, the first time I saw Merchant of Venice was before I started, really before I read it.
yeah,
And I was like, appalled.
right.
And I had seen it
By the great-
and I'm sure that it Princeton, the guy who took me there said, well, sit down and read about it.
I had a hearing.
And it just became one of my
No,
favorites to
it
teach.
came on, I think I was.
Oh, wait, what's that?
I don't think that's a ring. I can't get
No,
down.
I don't
to
think it is
It's like-
either. It looks like paper.
Phil, if we let them know that this is a ring, we will turn up.
Where were you sitting at the time?
I moved the chair.
Conservatives
It's not in your code by any chance?
No, I went like this, and I felt this. I had to have gone this way, but it could have jumped. You know, like this, little things hit.
It's all in the dark.
I had found this.
Did you hear it?
If anything, I would think it'd be hardest to spot on this.
Right.
You didn't hear it?
I'm sure it's not in your, you didn't have your coat on.
No, I was in there. But I felt it flush away. Right now I'm trying to learn
February 8th. See the flowers, she moved the chair.
Turn up and at least expect it.
Caribbean, oh, okay. Where else do you go in the
It's gonna turn.
We've been to every island 2 times. Don't say that.
Okay.
So you were in here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, because I'm sitting doesn't mean anything.
close.
Yeah.
My birthday's in February, so we go for my birthday.
Just tell Shanika, tell Barbara. Oh, it is. Yeah, I chair, and I used my hand, and I felt it go. It's always like, oops, that's the thing.
I don't know,
I
I
think
went
it's true, you have the challenge.
something, and I just felt it on live, Beowulf, which was one of the first actually, and George was there for. How far would it roll?
Yeah.
All right. Phyllis, it will turn up. If it was here, it'll turn up.
Yes.
It'll turn up. Just like a,
Unfortunately, it wasn't a contest.
I keep looking under here, I keep looking at the same places.
Showing, Phyllis, gold, silver.
It's gold, it's gold. Yeah.
I feel the heat coming out. You feel it?
It should
Can we move this table?
I keep looking under in here.
Yeah, no, I don't see it, but I know there's a little.
My chicken visible, they said it's gold and the carpet is not.
It should.
Wait, Eileen, I'm gonna move this. No, I already looked under there. But I wanna move the table this way.
If it isn't out, it's a shame.
It's gotta be here.
Michael has the same.
Gotta run though. Thank you, this was great.
See you, Denise.
Yes, how is he? He's fine.
Yeah, I couldn't hear.
Right outside.
Well, this is what we saw. I mean, the snow got so heavy. Yeah, and we got, I pulled the car up, one of the serious people come home to and it goes a lot of that tissue. Yes. And snow, and I'm sure. Am I gonna get my closet space? No, I'll be fine.
Is he more comfortable, I think?
So they put 3 staples in his.
Better than it was
And
the first
he's
3, 4 days.
Yeah, so he's good. Yeah, I got told him, we have a 10th wedding anniversary.
Normally, he says everything's hunky dory.
You get to the hospital, anywhere from now and then, they find one of white. For that anniversary.
Thank you, this was great.
Thank
Now I'm
you.
gonna go home.
Yeah.
I think
so I took a book from the library.
Oh, I used to love teaching about stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So you read Chaucer? Yeah. My kids love Chaucer.
I like Chaucer.
Yeah.
I once, the spread, like the end of this semester, and I knew I was going to have this group of kids together, surgery of IEP. And the kids were coming to radiation, so they were later, and it was coming right before school. They were right at the bus, so I said to them, I said, I'm going to have next year, I'm going to order these tickets, you know. You'll pay, you know, get down there, it's so large. Glasses are on the table. No, she's.
Oh, yeah.
I said, I don't know. You know, and my father was
Glasses.
Are they your glasses?
Everyone that's here.
They're gams.
Doesn't have to, I guess, but it's just genetic counseling.
What's going on?
Oh,
that's the best
rock
one.
orientation.
It's the best one.
My husband went, he's fine.
So
I had it, I'm sorry I didn't have
they
it
never
years
did
and years
yours
before I did it.
So, yeah. I just wanted to stay over science school so I can have a
It'll turn out, I'm telling you.
So usually they find it hard.
The topics, that's the topics.
And Fox Jays, at least they all see.
And there's a topic.
When you need
So
another appointment,
Sherry's on.
you don't have to.
It's in the old building.
They call you and say you need an appointment.
That's the
I'll
topic.
do it. I don't know.
That's the topic. Recommend well.
Because, you know, I know that happened to me the other day in the house.
What do you do?
But I heard before, I don't know if she was gonna have like.
Did you really follow
I didn't.
No, yesterday that happened to me
I
in the house.
think about it.
But I heard it because I have a surround floor.
Ideas for.
I heard it, I heard it drop and jump. It jumped around.
Next time.
What?
Oh, I've often dropped things at home, and I'm right here, and then it's way over there.
2 months.
And that's what I think happened.
You know, that happened to me with,
Hi, honey, it's Sherry Connor. I'm just wondering if you can give me a little
with
bit
my
of
phone for my car to change the battery in it.
Okay, I'm on my way
I
over. Thank you.
I couldn't open it, and I asked one of the kids at the desk if he could open it in the dining room. He's standing here, he opened it, and I was holding a part, and it jumped off. It was that even further than the wall. I happened to be walking home. Get so far away. And I told him, the driver, not to say the driver. I said, fine. I said, well, yes, I have driver's right. I mean, they jumped to it. I go to the gym, they were talking there.
You think you wrote this in?
Then I have to get him to the, get him to the gym, then I have to fill the gym out, then I'll go back and get him, then, you know, everybody just, and I thought it's, like earlier. You know, I've just had it. But he's fine, you know.
When you go?
Yeah, back to the same thing as he was before.
No, she felt
I felt
Yeah.
it fly off. I know, but I felt it fly off. It was just like the gold should just show up in the room. I hope so, because that happened to me not so long ago. I thought
looked it down and I didn't feel it. But I forgot to put it on. I don't think I did, I was never putting it on. All right, I'm gonna go get some shoes and felt on the floor, but I'm gonna go down.
No, I said they're all nice kids.
I felt it.
And she's,
So Michael will shoot.
He's fine. He's
Now,
fine.
did you have to go back and take the staples out?
He's gonna have to go to the doctor to get his staples taken. He's good. He's good.
Was he walking with the walker at that point?
He was, we had, one of the custodial people helped us get out to the car and pull the car over. There was, the snow, you know, they had the,
I love that.
And,
I was afraid.
we got the walker in the car, and he was holding onto the car as he went around to get in, and his feet fell out from under him.
Because when I was out there cleaning the car, my feet was like all over.
Yeah,
So my cell phone is the one that.
everybody was out there.
everybody was bad.
All the rabbis are out there, 4 rabbis.
It was unbelievable.
I was really surprised that she didn't
And
reach
just
her
heard
front
after
of her.
her,
I
Rabbi.
love your act.
Huh?
Oh my God.
Thank you.
You know, our neighbors, when I was in
Oh, I got it so many years ago.
where I went in there, I used to.
Wish I could find it again. All right, I gotta go. I gotta, my dog is taking over. It's time to go.
As it turned out, I was frustrated.
I'm behind.
There's so many doctors, and they were never experienced hair or they fourth hair of the foot, and normally they kept switching, because I'm like, what? And they were not.
Is Sonny still here?
But he'll get, no, she had a doctor's appointment.
There's nothing quite there.
Sensation that it should have been there, but she might have been.
She said it flew off when she made the chair.
You have that feeling, you know
I
what I
looked
mean?
every place.
There, and then all of a sudden it's not.
was sitting at
Where
this,
were you sitting?
I was sitting here, and they asked me to move a little, so I moved my chair, and as I picked up my hand, I thought it was going.
All right, let's
I don't know which direction it went, but I know things can bounce very far.
All right, let's look.
This way. Then I looked over here, I wondered if it went this way. That was the first place I looked.
Start. So Phil said you were sitting around here and you felt it fly off.
I was sitting here, facing this way, and I moved the chair, and I moved my hand fast, and I felt it fly off, but I don't know which direction it went. I know it could bounce far.